It's now 3 days since the death of Alexey Navalny, and the Russians have still failed to hand over his body. The Russian authorities, the Kremlin, have still failed to hand over his body. And under the Russian legal system, this is an obligation to be done within 2 or 3 days. And now we're told it's going to be 2 weeks as a minimum. The speculation is, of course, that means the Russian authorities are hoping there will be time for the radioactive evidence of any sort of poisoning to disappear from Navalny's body before it's handed to the family. On Friday, after the Russian Federal Penitentiary Service announced his death, the propaganda system flew into action saying that he had died of a detached blood clot. Uh, but you wouldn't know this, number one, and it would be impossible to confirm without an autopsy. Then, later on, they announced that he had died of sudden death syndrome. Uh, well, that means nothing. That means nothing. Or he died of natural causes means nothing. That simply means he wasn't assassinated. He wasn't murdered. Well, that would mean nothing either, of course. On Saturday, somebody from the prison said that his body had been sent to a morgue in Salekhard. And when his mother and lawyer travelled to the Salekhard morgue, they found it closed. And there was a telephone number on the door which the lawyer called, and he was told that the body wasn't there. And that and then they spoke to somebody from the local branch of the Russian investigative committee who said that the cause of death had not been determined, and that his body wouldn't be uh, given back to the family until the investigation was complete. Then there were other stories from sources close to the action, because there's sources everywhere, that said that his body was indeed in the Salekhard morgue and had been there since the Friday evening, that no autopsy had been performed, and that at the same time the body was covered in bruises. Now, whether these bruises were a result of an attempt at CPR, or or whether they were evidence of being beaten, that isn't clear. But the source had said that he'd seen the body and that it was covered in bruises. So at that point, on Saturday evening, um, there was a great movement across Russia and among Russian nationals abroad to contact the Federal Investigative Committee in Russia, um, to demand that the authorities hand over his body to his relatives. So the Federal Investigative Committee was flooded with calls and with emails. By Sunday, uh, traffic evidence showed a huge convoy of official vehicles travelling to Salekhard, um, from where Navalny's body, from the prison where Navalny had died, um, and so again, suspicious movement, suspicious activity, and it's not unlike Kemi Badenoch. It's sort of efforts to try to hide anything other than um, the story which is currently getting out, and uh, you know, careful language about evidence, careful language about evidence, and the evidence here in Navalny's case is his body. His body is still a testament to crime, and On Monday morning, Alexey Navalny's mother and his lawyer were then turned away, literally pushed out of the morgue in Salekhard, and at that point, Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told journalists in Moscow that his body would not be handed by the Kremlin because it's not a function of the presidential administration. They would not be returning. The Kremlin would not be returning Navalny's body. It's not part of their job. So he's trying to wipe his hands clean, like Lady Macbeth. And in the evening, yesterday evening, the Russian investigative committee announced that that Navalny's body had been sent for chemical examination, which will take 14 days. By this time, 65,000 people had contacted the investigative committee to demand that Navalny's body be given to the family. Yulia Navalnaya has now announced that she will continue her husband's work, and she says that she knows exactly why Putin killed Alexei 3 days ago, and that the team will reveal more about this in the near future. And I will try and keep you abreast of this sort of thing. But it is a shocking story, and a shocking development about somebody who was serving, an innocent person who was serving a 19-year sentence in polar wolf prison, simply for standing up to a thug. Apparently I use the word thug quite a lot. The word thug is a wonderful word that we've appropriated from Hindi. And the Polar Wolf Correctional Facility number 3, IK3, and it's got very harsh conditions. And I think now we need to be very careful about other prisoners who are in the same position, like Kara-Murza. And I was disappointed yesterday to read a statement from our own politicians saying that we have no intention of trading Kara-Murza, who is also a British citizen, for any sort of spy that we might have incarcerated in our own prison system. We could, for example, send Julian Assange to Russia. I'm sure Mr. Putin would be very happy to take on Julian Assange, and we would then be able to do a little good. The argument that we can't appeal for the release of Kara-Murza is that this would only give license to hostage takers, and that we can't be seen to be part of that sort of shady traffic. Well, we've got plenty of hostages. We call them migrants, don't we? And also at this particular time when we're looking for the release of hostages in Israel, I don't think we can start to get precious about it and pontificate in that sort of way. I don't think the hands of this government are bloodless.